We only ever did 2 trips, one to Osnabrück and back, and then the second one we got shot down by a Messerschmitt 110.
Anyway, then I got flown to Berlin, to a little small camp. I was in a cell there for about 5 or 6 days. Anyway, eventually a Gestapo bloke came along and he bashed me up a couple of times and knocked me off my chair and gave me a cigarette and wouldn't light it. And I got so mad I shoved the civil into his face and he got upset about that.
Then they posted me to 3 group of Bomber Command. I didn't realise how difficult it was to get through a tour of ops. Very small percentage did. After doing 20 ops with Bomber Command, I was shot down over Krefeld and became a prisoner of war. That was the end of my war career.
Over the 3.5 years that I was a POW, we were occasionally allowed to write or send these little messages home. Dear Dad, have not yet received any letters, and keeping well, which was a bloody lie. I'm about 10 stone, which means I was 2.5 stone, but you couldn't say, you know. Have malaria? Love to all, Jim. That's as much as you could write.
I thought that the lights in the aircraft had come on, but in fact searchlights had got us coned. Then they'd put a blue light on as an indicator to the ACAC batteries to turn off us and allow the fighters to come in. It was around about that time that the rear gunner, he'd done a whole tour and he knew what the score was and he was heading up to get out from the forward escape hatch. I had to go down to get my parachute off the rack, so I elected to jump out the rear hatch, sort of put my feet out and sat there looking at the blackness below and thinking about things. And then there was what appeared to be sparks, but perhaps I think it was probably burning oil coming back from the starboard engine. And I thought, well, if I got 2 options, I can sit here and fry or take my chance. And so I just put my head down, and it was quite a jolt when the parachute opened. Then I could hear what I figured was the enemy fighter coming round. And I thought, well, I've got to get out of here. And pull one strap so you tip the parachute sideways and that spills a lot of air and you descend very quickly. Hit the ground before I knew it. It just collapsed in a heap. I had a broken, that's my war injuries. I had a broken finger. That was me on the ground. And I had to get away.
Well, I was on front duty at the time. We thought, never going to be, the Jets. And all of a sudden, planes are flying over, see? And I think, what the hell are they doing up there, you see? And all of a sudden, you could see with Singapore, lights flashing. And the sergeant came out to the gate. I said, what's happening? He said, we've been bombed. I said, by who? He said, the Japs. Oh. I said, what'll I do? He said, well, they might send paratroopers down. I said, well, I got 3 bullets. What do I do when they're gone? He said, use your bloody bayonet. But they said, don't be worried. The Japs are small, they're blind, they can't see. All this crap, you see. They made us look like bloody idiots. So all they did then was, we're in the middle, and the Jets comes in, then they come around, and as they were coming around, we had to keep pulling back and pulling back. They were all stuck down on Singapore Island. So we were stuck.
The aircraft caught fire. We'd actually been into the target, marked the target and come out again. And the flight engineer went into the Astrodome and had a look, and he said, oh yes, there's a small fire between the engines. The skipper decided to try and put it out by diving, creating a lot of airspeed and blowing it out. But that didn't work, and it got bigger, a bit like a blowtorch. And then I heard the skipper say, you better bail out, boys. So one of the crew came rushing down, and out he went. And I thought, perhaps I'd better go too. So the recommended method was to sit with your feet out, facing the rear, then slide out so that you didn't hit anything. So I did this, and I pulled my ripcord, and all of a sudden there was dead silence. And apart from a few bangs and crashes from anti-aircraft guns, which you could now hear because there was no engine noise to blanket it. And there I was, midsummer's night, beautiful night. I thought it was all getting a bit boring, and all of a sudden here's the ground coming up to hit me. So I landed in a field of a crop of some sort, had a look at the sky, decided where the direction home might be, and I thought perhaps I'll get over the Dutch border and get some help. So I started walking, went through a hedge, and here was a farmer with a scythe coming out to do something in his field. So he started shouting and raving, and German army people who'd got an anti-aircraft gun somewhere over the edge of the field said, for you the war is over. So that was it. It was.
For some unknown reason, the hierarchy decided we'd be able to go up and bomb Mersematru at night and pathfind for the South African Bomber Squadron. Well, albacores were not really suited for that type of life. We only do 95 knots, and we could only carry about 24 flares and a couple of small bombs. And anyway, I did a couple of trips over Mersematru, and I got pretty well damaged every night, but nothing seriously. Anyway, on the third time up to Mersematru, the Germans had brought in so much ack, and they had so many searchlights, it was impossible to keep out of them. 3 searchlights caught us. We couldn't get out of them. And eventually we got hit badly, caught a light. Only thing we could do was just glide out to sea, which we did. Of course, it's about 2 o'clock in the morning, pitch black. We didn't know where we were going. And eventually we just crashed in the sea. Not very nicely, of course. And eventually we got washed ashore, of course, and the Italians caught us when we got to the beach and bashed us up and gave us a pretty good hiding. And Luckily, a German officer came over the sand dunes and spoke perfect English and said, "Come with me." couldn't go fast enough with him. And he had a little jeep over the other sand dunes, and he took us back to Mersmatru.
I thought we must be in Germany, but when I'd been walking for some time, I saw through an avenue of trees and all that sort of thing, and I saw a sign which read Julimon. Now, I knew from my schoolboy French that Julimon is French. We'd been told, look for, if you can get near a village, look for the priest's house, because the chances are that you'll get help there. I stood there and looked up and banged on the door, and the door was opened and I was dragged in, and there I was, with resistance worker, a bloke called Emile Zofler. I didn't know that till years later, that was what his name, because I didn't ask his name and he didn't ask mine. There was the wife had a babe in arms, and she was absolutely petrified. We knew what was liable to happen to her, so I couldn't have stayed there. He'd fitted me out in the meantime. He'd taken my uniform, flying boots, that sort of thing, given me a pair of trousers and jacket and a French-style beret. Started walking. Along came a patrol car with an officer and a bunch of squaddies in a van at the rear. Immediately there was, I don't know how many automatic things pointed at me, so where did you get the clothes? By signs. So I stood on one foot and stuck my hands out like a scarecrow, indicated that I'd got the clothes off a scarecrow. We ended up eventually in Gestapo headquarters in Liège, and after we'd been there a few days, they suddenly called for McQueen, and so I got taken out, and this was another of these Gestapo interviews. And where did I get the clothes? I could be shot as a spy. I must be a spy. And I said, did the old scarecrow routine. You know, it was pretty silly really, but nothing much you could do. He just continued to give you a name, rank and number. Then the worst part of that was when they took me back, they put me in a cell on my own, and I was just 21 that time. That was a low point, and I discovered myself alone because I hadn't learned to cope with solitude like that.
They're putting 3,500 Brits and 3,500 Australians. They're going up north to Thailand. Plenty of fruit, plenty of food, you know, wonderful. I'm not on that. But bugger that. It's ready to go. I just rolled my blanket and got on the end of it. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Well, it took us about 4 days, I think, to get up there. They put us all into cattle trucks, about 40 into each. You couldn't lay down or anything, you just sat up, you know. And for 4 days, occasional stop, but if you wanted to relieve yourself or do it, then we had dysentery striking. You can imagine 40 guys in a thing. And if you wanted to go, you had to get a guy each hand to, you know, hold you out over the back as the train's going. It wasn't going too fast. It took 4 bloody days to get up to Bang Pong. And getting to Bang Pong, we got there in the night and were unloaded there. I don't know how many trains went because altogether F Force was 7,000 men. Marched from there to Kanchanaburi, that's with the bridges, with the so-called bridge on the River Kwai. Then we found out we're going there to build a railway, going from Kanchanaburi up through to the Taripagoda Pass in Burma. On the way up it took, I don't know, about a month, marching, stopping, crapping. By then we were moving into one of the worst disease belts in the world. On the way up, one of the guys collapsed. So they grabbed a stretcher and they had 4 guys on it. I said, I'll carry his pack. So away we go trudging in the night. I've got this bloody pack on, and we stopped for a rest. And I opened his pack. I thought he might have a bit of food there I could nick. But there's a bloody big Bible. I don't know where we got it. It must be it was that and that thick. And I thought, a bloody Bible. Maybe an atheist. I just got the Bible and threw the bloody thing. Said, bastard me, I've carted the thing for 40 kilometres. So the next day, he asked, he said, where's my pack? And I said, oh, here it is, I've got it. I gave him his pack. He said, where's my Bible? I said, listen, you religious bloody idiot, I carried that. And I said, I nearly fell 3 or 4 times. He said, that's me smoking paper. But from there on the road up, I mean, there's a lot of different things happening. You stopped, you got food sometimes you didn't. But we were really getting into the bad stuff then because people were getting dysentery. Then you were struck with malaria. 2 types of malaria, 2 types of dysentery. And then you had you carrying bloody big logs. You couldn't do anything. If you looked sideways, you got a bashing. And food, then the higher you went up, scarcer food became. You might have got half a cup of rice and 3 beans. Count the beans out. 1, 2, 3. But then the guys started dying from there up. I mean, they got all sorts of things wrong, you know, got struck with bloody 3. You still had to work. Like the Japs would come and say, we want 200 men, see? This is, you might be 500, 300 ill, lying down. But if they said 200, if you only gave them 50, they went through the hospital. Bang, bang, bang. Still down to work. 15 hours sometimes a day. And wasn't pleasant.
We were taken by train down the Rhine to Frankfurt, where there was an interrogation centre, and after being in solitary there for about 4 days, being interrogated, I was allowed into the prisoner's compound, and there I met my rear gunner. And later on, the flight engineer. The skipper actually didn't get out. The rear gunner said he bailed out and looked back and saw the wing fall off. I suspect that was the end for the skipper. After being at this interrogation centre for about a week, about 100 people were collected together, put on a train, and we went to a camp called Heidekrug, Salzburg 6. There was an escape committee in the camp, which I promptly joined and decided I was going to escape and go home. And they had a tunnel partly completed. So I was down for the second night on that. But unfortunately, when the night came round, the tunnel was discovered after about 5 people had got out.
I didn't realise at the time, but I'd broken my back, and I had all my ribs bashed, and I had concussed as well. I went down to a hospital in Sargon, and when I got to that hospital, there was a New Zealander, a Dr. Hetherington from Auckland. He was working there. He'd been caught in Greece, and he'd been made to work in the hospital. So anyway, I was there for several weeks. I never got off my bed because my back then was very sore, but I didn't really think I'd broken it, and they never x-rayed it, you see. And anyway, I got special milk parcels from the Red Cross, and eventually I could stand up and walk. I was down to about 6 stone. I couldn't stand up and walk, you know, but eventually I did. Then I was sent into Stadigloff 3, which was the big Air Force camp, prison camp. I was there for some 6 months, I suppose, and then a few of us were picked to go to Poland to open up a camp for the American pilots that were being shot down. And we went to this camp in Poland, which was a shocking camp. It was an agricultural college originally, and the conditions were shocking. And they parade us on the parade ground in the middle of the winter with no clothing and searches every day. And anyway, eventually we were shifted from there back to Stadigloff 3.
All of a sudden, cholera started striking, and you could get cholera in the morning, and within 8 hours you could die. We had no medicines, none at all. And if you died with cholera, you couldn't bury them, you had to burn them. That's why I think I said before, at times we'd put 4 bodies on and get all the timber, you know, burn. It would take a good 20 hours. And you put 4 mates on that had died, and after you'd just scrape all the bones together of 4 guys and we'd split them up. But they're all mates, didn't matter. And we buried them, put names on them, so the grave people after knew exactly where to come to pick up the... But it amused me to think they got 4 people in each one. See, the tools you got were a chunkle. They don't use spades and things. It's like a big hoe. And wicker baskets. And you'd had people to digging, you know, as you're going along the side of bloody hills or mountains, and then they'd take it and dump it over the bloody side. That went on for hour after hour. And some parts they brought in elephants to carry great big teak logs too. And they said, Japs used to say, 1 elephant worth 25 Australian. They did a bloody marvellous job, actually, considering the Brits were going to put a railway through there 20-odd years before, but they reckoned it couldn't be done. The Jap engineers did it within 12 months, or they got the railway built. Admitted it cost thousands of lives, but...
At the time, they were catching such a lot of us that they didn't have room in the so-called Luft camps where they trapped the airmen, but we were sent to Lambsdorff, which was a working camp. There were about 10,000 normally in the camp. The Air Force compound was double-wired in the middle of the rest of the camp because the Fliegers, as they called them, were considered a greater risk of escape because of the navigational skills, if you like, or more idea of where they were. We had, for instance, a Ukrainian guard. one guy called Ukraine Joe, and Joe used to wield a big revolver. If you didn't get out on parade quick enough, he'd turn it round the other way and give you a whack with the butt of it, you know, that sort of thing. Not too long after we got there, of course, they'd staged a Dieppe raid, an abortive raid by the Canadians on Dieppe. Unfortunately, some of the Dieppers had bent the rules of war and had actually tied up some prisoners with baling wire and in fact booby-trapped some. They'd actually contravened the war conventions in that case. And so Adolf said that for every German tied up, he tied up 10 Britishers, you see. And so we were a convenient lot. They were already there. So they first off was they came and some SS guards came in and they marched us, took us outside, and they used string that used to come with the Red Cross parcels. They tied our wrists together till they got some chains made with handcuffs and chains with a short length like that, so you get your handcuffs there, and you had to wear those, put them on in the morning, and they'd take them off at night to go to sleep. It was a bit of a nonsense, really. If you're caught with them off, then you had to go and stand outside against the wall with them behind your back. It went on for about a year, and then they ran out of puff.
We knew the Germans would take our boots away. The Red Cross store issued us with an extra pair, and we had big greatcoats. It was winter, so we hung the boots round our necks and had them here and hunched ourselves up inside the greatcoat and managed to smuggle these boots onto the train. One of the boys had managed to get a hacksaw. Well, I think he'd got more than one hacksaw, just the blades. And so the scheme was you sat in a row back to the train, put your hands behind your back and worked the saw blade. It was tedious, but we did 20 minutes each sort of thing, and everyone shuffled around, and there was 50 of us in half a cattle truck. You can imagine we were crowded, so it was easy to conceal what we were doing. And after a couple of days, we got to a big German marshalling yard at Marienburg, and the lad with us, he's an Irishman, Paddy, he was too keen. He went on sawing after the truck had stopped. There was sawdust falling on the track outside, and of course the Germans spotted this and went into uproar. All out, everybody out. They found our boots, threw all the wood wool out on the track, and one of the boys set fire to it, and that went up. You know what wood wool burns like an explosion. So while all this was going on, there was a train going by on the next track, and it was loaded with tanks, aircraft, guns, all these things going off to the Russian front. And I noticed there were labels on the trucks under a little sort of spring clip, you know, held the paper label on it. Obviously this was to go to such and such a regiment, and this was to go there. So I was pulling these out and dropping them on the floor, and as the train was going by very slowly, it was just shunting, you know. I suppose they were making up the train to... Anyway, when the fire had been put out and the German sergeant major in charge saw that was all right, he turned around and saw me pulling these labels off, so he went into hysterics. He actually pushed his Tommy gun in my stomach and pulled the trigger, but it didn't go off. I think he'd forgotten to take the safety off.
The chap that was in it, in the wooden horse, was a bloke called Chuck Lark. He was an Australian. He was a very short bloke, very small. And he was okay to, you know what a wooden horse looks like? He could get inside this wooden horse, you see, and then people would lift him around, and he was sitting in this inside the wooden horse, you see. It was made out of plywood from the camp parcels. And the Germans thought it was a good idea. They used to love watching us vault over this wooden horse all day. The guards up in the towers would, you know, laugh and yell at us, you know. They didn't realise there was somebody in the wooden horse digging a tunnel. And this went on for a long while, really. And I didn't ever have to go and dig the tunnel. I had to vault over this horse and get rid of the sand and things like that, and lots of jobs you had to do for one big escape, you know. There was a big building which was sort of the canteen and storeroom for the Germans out at the end, and we were able to get into that on the ceiling, and they put a lot of the sand onto the ceiling, but the rest of the sand, we all had to get rid of it. And we used to develop a cloth thing with a little tie thing here. You'd fill it up with sand, and you go around walking around the circuit, you see, and you just have a little string here, and when you're walking, they just ease it up, and the sand will drop out, you see. Well, a lot of people had that, you see. And that's how we got rid of the sand. It took a long while.
We got something like a near letter that we could write send through the Red Cross, and that eventually reached my mother at home, and I got a reply from there, and they were able to send a clothing parcel. I got some woolen underwear and some from home, especially wrapped up and New Zealand chocolate, which came in a chocolate tin, 4 bars of chocolate. That was always very acceptable because it was a great rarity. Apart from anything we got from home, we got 200 cigarettes through the British Red Cross.
There were New Zealand parcels, British parcels and American parcels. The American parcels were the best. They were good. The New Zealand parcels were shocking. Well, I don't suppose we had much food over here then, I don't know, but you know, you get sort of things like peas, but you couldn't even get them soft, you know, and a bit of dried fruit, which took about all week to soften them and things like that. And you get a bit of bully beef in a tin, and you know. The only good thing in the New Zealand parcel was a bar of Cadbury's chocolate. And that was worth a lot of money. Got bread, plenty of bread from the Germans, very much like Vogel's bread. But that was quite good. And he got potatoes, plenty of potatoes. But that's really about all you really got from the Germans. Once every couple of months you might get a bit of meat. But it was normally the pig's stomach or something like that, you know.
As we say, we were hunting for food all the time, and being stuck next to the Jap camp, they were there to keep a close eye on us. They had a pet duck, and Liz and I spotted it waddling around there one day. I waited till night, and I swam over and grabbed it, wrung its neck, brought it back, and we sneaked away to cook it. And the Japs looking for it the next day, naturally. They blamed a couple of Koreans, and they bashed the crap out of them. We didn't care. I could have done it, but it was lovely, the duck. So on Anzac Day, on my birthday, I always have Peking duck, don't I, Vic?
Then, of course, the Russians came in. They took over, the Germans took off, and they handed the camp over to the British senior officer. We were looking after about 120 displaced people who were with us, and they were from Sweden, England, France, Belgium. Some had babies, some had little children, and we had to interview all these people to make sure they were genuine people. And that took several weeks, of course. And anyway, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know what was happening. The Americans were very close, but not close enough. You know, we were getting in touch with them because the Russians were there in force. All this time looking after these displaced persons, there was a young girl there. Well, she was in her 22, 23. She became my interpreter as well, and we got very friendly. And she told me what was happening. Her mother had been taken to Siberia by the Russians. Her father was a doctor. He'd been shot in front of her. The Germans had captured her, taken her to Germany, and she was working in the hospitals over there. And we got friendly, and I got sort of sorry about her. And the only way to do anything about it was to marry her. It was the only way I could get her out. And we came back to Wellington, and she settled in very well.
We're off the railway then, had been building big tunnels into the side of the hill. Those tunnels were meant for us. They were going to put everyone in big tunnels, blow the front down. But they'd already dropped the atom bombs, we knew that. Didn't kill enough of the bastards. Not that I'm heartless. So over come a plane and 3 paratroops landed. Actually, we'd been working, that was one of the things on the aerodrome, which is now big Changi aerodrome, see, for the Japs. And then come these 3 big guys, Jesus, I looked about, compared to us, was amazing. And they were doctors, actually. They'd arrived, and that was the first ones we had seen. All done up smart, and it was good. And then the next few days they kept coming in, we were sending them, landing in planes then. And they told us, we're not going to give you too much food to start with, till your stomachs are in bad. So they slowly built us up a bit at a time, They kept us there for about a month, I think, after the war finished. Then put us on the ship and slowly took another 3 weeks there to get back. I'd been a couple of weeks on reasonable food, but I was still pretty thin. Just before entering Sydney Harbour, all looking well.
We knew that the Russians were advancing, and we got to the stage where we could even hear the guns. We all anticipated that when the war ended, it was going to be a crisis situation of some sort. The senior Allied officer, Colonel Zemke, who was an American colonel, had organised a group to train people in infantry tactics and that sort of thing, using these ex-infantry officers as instructors. And I was in this group, so we we were fully prepared for the end of the day, end of the war, to actually defend ourselves or whatever was necessary. We'd even bought arms in from the Germans by our system of trading, which was to get them to bring something in which we would exchange for a tin of Red Cross coffee, and then blackmail them to bring in something a bit more serious and so forth. And we even had pistols. So we were prepared for the day. And when the Germans decided to evacuate us, Colonel Zemke said, "No, we're not going, we're staying here, you go." And the Germans said, "Well, we'll have to shoot you all." And Colonel Zemke said, "No, we don't think that's a good idea because you might regret it." And the German CO decided he would leave us, and off he went.
Personnel Dispatch and Reception Centre was at Brighton, and there at the BDRC, as it was called at Brighton, there was a special POW bar, and there we could buy a gin for sixpence a double tot. And I think that this was regarded as some kind of therapy, because we were in a fairly, some of us anyhow, very fragile state of mind in a way. Strangely, I felt that I was pretty bloody useless. I felt that I'd failed to, survived only 2 operations. At one stage I did in fact buy myself a Walther, a P38, from an American serviceman, usual place in the toilet in the bar. I sort of felt there wasn't much point in carrying on. Gave up the idea. Then when I got really thinking about it, well, I survived this long, why the hell would I do that?
Took a while to get back into civvy clothes, We got onto soap, and then I went around selling it wholesale, actually. Then after 6 months, I'd had in my mind I was going into show business. So, went and had a look at a couple of shows, and we built a game, a poker roll down from memory. One day, one of the army guys that I got to know, who had been in New Guinea, he wasn't a POW, said, "I'm going over to New Zealand, would you like to come?" He said, "I've been there pre-war and it's quite good." And I said, "Yeah, I'll be in anything but a bath, let's go." So I went to come over here and clamped onto, just got a small game and did the whole run. And I could see that this was a much easier place to start show business in Australia.
It was straight after I came back from the war. I was hit in the back by a car in Mount Eden Road there, and so I had to go to the Green Lane clinic there, you see. And so they said, "What's the matter?" I said, "Well, I've got a bit of a sore, bit of pain in the neck, Otherwise I'm okay." "Oh, well, we'll get you x-rayed." So they x-rayed me, you see, and they x-rayed my back as well. And the next thing I know, they whipped in there, strapped me up, put me on the bed and tied me to this bed. And I said, "What's the matter?" "Well, we don't know, but there's a surgeon coming in from Littlemore. He's going to look at you." Well, he came in, took more x-rays, asked me my history, and when I told him I'd crashed a plane, he said, "That's when you broke your back." He said, "Do you have any pain?" I said, "No." He said, "No, but," he said, the damage is visible on this x-ray, but it's healed up." Yeah. In fact, I lay in my bed for all that time that the thing healed up, you see, yeah. That's when I found out I'd broken my back.
I used to meet with other former POWs, mainly Army blokes, and we used to have a regular monthly meeting. We call it a monthly show, where we'd have a bit of entertainment and a bit of serious drinking, and occasionally various members who had connections would turn up with a kit of mutton birds or a sack of oysters from Bluff, and we would have a bit of a set to, and we'd have somebody playing a little bit of music.
Lucky to come out alive. We lost thousands. Yeah, you needed a fair bit of luck. Not going to Borneo or going up with that and surviving. You needed a fair bit of luck to get out of it. Be much better if we'd gone through the bloody war fighting than being in there.